Hi, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connection. Each of us have stories that help us understand each other and help to bring our community closer together. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who've had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who've had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories. Community Connections is about these people and about their stories. I'm sure you'll enjoy meeting these amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Please enjoy. Welcome to Community Connections. My name is Gordy Hogue, and I am delighted as our guest today is a composer, a conductor, a singer, a man who's played hockey since I think about age 12. He and his wife, Catherine, and family live in our community. He's a wonderful, caring, giving, talented family man. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. O Canada, Mark Donnelly. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Gordon. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Delighted to have you here on Community Connections. And I know you were born and raised in Vancouver and North Delta. Can you talk a little bit about how your life and family got started there and how music and all the other things became so important in your life?
Well, being born in Vancouver is it's basically because back at that time there was no hospital out in Delta.
Yeah.
So I was born at St. Vincent's Hospital up on 33rd and Heather. And then I was whisked away shortly thereafter to North Delta, Sunshine Hills, in fact, and into the house that my dad built to in anticipation of my upcoming arrival.
Oh.
So, and really with that, I still have the Delta radio alarm saw that he used to build that house.
Oh, neat.
So it's in my garage workshop here in White Rock.
Very neat.
I use the table saw most of the time, but sometimes it's, if you don't have someone to feed the wood for you, it's nice to have the wood stationary and the saw move.
Did he build the whole house?
Yeah, at the time, well, since about 1950, early 50s, he was a ceramic tile contractor with my aunt's husband and his father. Pete and Oscar Lazzarato. Pete was the father. We used to call him Nono, even though he wasn't really our grandfather. We were fairly close with our cousins when we were young, the Lazzaratos. They lived up on number 10 highway. And so he was a ceramic tile contractor and tile setter. And for a few years, they were also general contractors. And so they built a few houses in North Delta, and then he bought a property in Sunshine Hills, which was a very new subdivision at the time. In fact, there was only 13 streets in Sunshine Hills. We were on Carncross Crescent, which until the 70s, into the almost the mid 70s, it only had 3 houses on it. And so it was, it was kind of set away. Sunshine Hills was, you had to go off the beaten track to get to Sunshine Hills. It was just a group of houses. And so they built the house there. And so we lived there, had a little difficulty selling some of the houses on 112th Street in that area in North Delta around 80th. And in fact, I remember my parents saying that they sold the house next to ours in North Delta on 112 for $6,000.
Oh, wow.
So prices have changed a bit since then.
Dramatically. Did you have siblings as you were growing up?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 3.
Yeah.
My sister Maureen was 4 years older than me. She passed away in 2011 from a autoimmune disease. And my brother, Father Lawrence, is the pastor of St. Joachim and Anne's Parish, Catholic parish in Aldergrove. and he's 3 years older than me.
So growing up in that family, and you obviously started playing hockey and got interested in music and in composing and conducting and singing. How did all of that evolve growing out of your family? What was the roots of that and the foundation that they provided for you?
Well, first of all, with the hockey, I really wasn't much of a hockey fan when I was a little kid. Um, in fact, my brother, sister, and I used to make fun of my dad when he'd watch hockey because the play-by-play just sounded so absurd to us. It just sounded like a bunch of yelling and then screaming when someone scored. And but in grade 4, I had to do a project on Massachusetts, and I had a very good friend, Drew Cadenhead, who was a hockey fan, and he played hockey in North Surrey, out of the North Surrey Rec Center. And he told us all the teams that were in each of our states, NHL teams, and mine happened to be Boston. Well, it was a good time to be a Boston fan because it was Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, Jerry Cheevers, Wayne Cashman, so the likes.
Derek Sanderson there then too?
Yes, that was Derek Sanderson was there, and who played a little bit for the Canucks, by the way. And they won the Stanley Cup that year. So that kind of got me going as a hockey fan, and it just began to dominate my life. And then in grade 7, through my father Lawrence, we got an ice rink in North Delta. And so I started playing hockey at the age of 12 and started right off as a goaltender immediately. So, and that I sort of always identified as a goaltender. In fact, you can see a few pictures in the background if you squint enough. There's a couple of pictures there of me as a goalie in some charity events that I always appreciated playing in, because I was never good enough to play any really high level. But I guess through my singing, I was able to play with the players that I idolized when I was a kid. So it was fun to play with, particularly Darcy Rhoda. Darcy Rhoda has become a very good friend of mine. Of course, with the COVID thing, you don't get to see a lot of your friends.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that will come back as soon as we get over this bit of madness here.
And you're in fact in quarantine right now, aren't you? As a result.
Yes, we went down to our 5th child, Francis. Just got married in Virginia.
Yeah.
And so we had to come back, and when we came back, we had to quarantine. And so we're on day 4 of our quarantine. So this is a great time for the community connection, because it's, I don't have anything else to do.
Well, you're out.
Might as well talk to Jordan.
I see you out walking all the time and getting exercise, but you guess you can.
Well, I figure I think that there's been an overreaction to COVID-19. However, that's not to mean that there's not something to be concerned about. And the main concern is, of course, people with comorbidities. And several years ago, I wound up losing half my weight. I was 370 pounds, and I got down to 185. I actually, when you're overweight, sometimes you can get as obsessed. You have a certain impropriety with regards to food, and it's other things too. There's certain individual conditions, and if you stay up late and don't get enough sleep, that also affects your ability to process the food that you take in. Anyway, I wound up losing about over 20 pounds more than I should have. And I got myself into a bit of trouble that way. But the original goal, my original goal turns out was not what most of the health professionals I was working with thought was good for me. They thought it should have been about 10 or even 15 pounds higher. So I wound up, the problem is when you're not at your right weight, you can tend to yo-yo a bit. And so I've yo-yoed a bit, and I put on about half of what I'd lost. But that's great because I'm still down about 100 pounds, which is, I can't ignore that blessing. But so the thing is though, I still have a fair amount of weight. So technically, or on paper, I am obese, and I know that I'm obese. So that is one of the most common comorbidities with COVID-19. So my part in fighting COVID-19 is to lose the weight, remove that comorbidity on my part. And like you said, I'm out walking every day, except of course during the quarantine. I got my treadmill in the back here. I've been using that since we've been on it. But the last 2 months, my goal has been to walk at least 3 miles a day. And I use the Nordic walking poles because they add about 40% extra calorie burning when you're walking. And I've managed over each of the last 2 months to walk over 100 miles.
Wow, good for you.
So, I'd encourage anybody to do that. If you're 40 years old, you should be walking at least 3 miles a day. And it's hard to get in. I found it difficult at the beginning. In fact, I've been trying to do more of the walking for maybe the last 5 months. And it took me 3 months to consistently get up to 3 miles a day.
Good for you.
So
if
that's my PSA for today. That's
a great PSA. Let me take you back to North Delta, leaving and graduating from there, and off to university, and your travels from there to finally end up in the White Rock community.
Well, White Rock was, when we were growing up as kids, White Rock was of course always a destination because it had the beach. Yeah. Right. And I remember coming in fact, we live on Buena Vista now. I remember when Buena Vista was basically just a road to kind of get down to the beach. It's almost like a switchback, In fact, I just thought of that now. If you look at those roads that go east-west along the hill going down to the beach, they are kind of like switchbacks, aren't they?
And some of them are, yes. Yeah.
So, and at the time, nobody really considered putting houses because the properties were so steep. But it's a lot different now. So it was always a kind of a destination for people in the Lower Mainland. You must remember that.
Yeah, well, I grew up not far from where you live now.
In the same place you are? Or?
No, I grew up in, it's called Dr. Alhogue Park now. Just up the road from you.
Oh, just up there. Yeah, I walked through that an awful lot. I try to chug up the hill through the park.
That's where I grew up from about grade 1 until I left for university. So
okay.
We're sort of neighbors.
There you go. Well, we're still sort of neighbors.
Still sort of neighbors.
You've moved on the other side.
Moved on down.
Side of us. Anyway, so I grew up in North Delta, and then partway through high school, we moved to Vancouver. That was the time in the 70s where they were giving tax credits if you moved closer to where you worked, and my dad's business was in Vancouver. So we moved to Vancouver, and I finished up high school at Eric Hamber, across from Van Dusen Gardens, and then went to university. And my plan was to become a high school band teacher. My main instrument was trombone. And it was really kind of because I had a bad trombone audition that I wound up doing a quick switch over to voice. I'd started singing a couple of years earlier. I was never much into singing when I was younger. In fact, my brother was always the singer in the family, and I would needle him because I'd say, well, singing's not really music because you're not playing an instrument. So God has a way of getting back at us, I suppose.
Indeed.
So I actually was accepted at VCC on trombone, but I was accepted in voice at UBC. And so I decided to go with voice, and I'm not exactly sure why. But that's what I went with. And then I fell in love with singing. And so much so that when I graduated from UBC, my desire was not to sing or not to become a band teacher, but actually become a professional musician. And that's kind of how things got started.
And you went from UBC to where did you ended up at one point in Pennsylvania? And
yeah, so I sang for a year right out of university. I sang for a year with the Vancouver Chamber Choir, which was wonderful. I consider the two best conductors I've ever worked with. One was as an instructor, and that was James Fankhauser, who I believe lives up in Kelowna now. He was kind of a tyrant with regards to conducting technique. And I never had a lot of technique, but somehow he thought I had something there. So he actually allowed me into the second year of the advanced conducting class. And everybody had to take first year conducting. Only a few were able to take the advanced conducting. And there were a lot of other students who, colleagues of mine who had way better technique than me. But he kind of, the reason he said it is he said, well, I know you're going to be a conductor. And that was back when I was, I think, 20 years old. Said, I know you're going to be a conductor. And I never sang in an ensemble of his, except for a special event in Victoria for the CBC. And so I learned so much from him about music isn't just getting the notes at the right pitch and the right order, but it's more than that. It's the music on the page is really just a schematic or a blueprint. It's not the music itself. And in fact, since there's a flow to music, the dots only show the contour. And so it's very much like trying to follow a graph to do something that requires another sense that goes beyond simply the mathematics of the sound and the time. And so he was one influence. And then the other was, well, actually, I should say that there were three. The conductor I sang under the most at UBC was Jim Schell. And he was kind of a bit of a quirky guy, but I don't know if I've ever known anyone who loved music as much as him. And so I would go to his office many times and just talk about music and different kinds of music. And he could play anything of any genre on the piano. Wow. And he just would go there. And so he was a great influence. He's probably the one most responsible for me not wanting to or wanting to pursue a professional career. And then the third one is John Washburn with the Vancouver Chamber Choir. And not only was he a great musician, but he's the one that taught me that in music, time is money. And so, and it literally was when you're dealing with a professional ensemble, because it's not just one person, but if you have, a choir of 20 people, or you have a choir and an orchestra, and a choir and orchestra and soloists, then there's always somebody who's saying, you only have this much time. There's just like a job site, there's a shop steward who's keeping on top of things. And so when I wound up becoming a conductor, and mostly in amateur settings, I took that same attitude that time is money. And what I figured is that if you have an amateur choir, you have amateur singers, I need to respect their time. And I want to give them as much as I can from my musical knowledge. And what they're giving me is the material, and the material with which to create something beautiful. And at the same time, I want them to be able to leave with something that maybe, I've been doing this music thing professionally for 40 years. And I've probably picked up a couple of things here and there that might help someone on their journey in music. And so if I can leave them with a little bit that maybe will help them to become a better musician, then maybe develop something, maybe I can learn something from them, then that's what I figure I'm paying them. So, but it's important that I want rehearsals to be enjoyable, but at the same time, I want us to accomplish something. At the end of the session, I want us to be able to say, you know what, we just did something good. And even if we were the only ones who heard it.
So then from your mentors, and can you describe how you got into professional singing? And I think you were at one point, was it Scranton, it was American Hockey League, I think, was the first place you started singing national
Yeah, I
anthem.
came up through the minors.
Came up through the minors. That's a good description. How did you end up down in Pennsylvania?
Well, I decided to upgrade my music skills, and I went to McGill to get a licentiate in music, opera performance. And while I was there, I got a call from a friend of mine from Ladner, who was living in Sacramento at the time, Phil Carey. He was a lawyer down in Sacramento. And he said, hey, there's a parish down in Scranton, Pennsylvania that really wants a good music director who specializes in Gregorian chant and 16th century polyphony. Well, that's, even though most people know me as an opera singer, or kind of opera singer, or an anthem singer, that's my specialty. And so I said, well, that sounds good. And then I went to talk to my voice teacher, who was, at the time, was trying to get me over to Graz in Austria for their summer program. And she said, you know what, you'll go over to Graz, you'll impress, but you won't get a contract this year. This was shortly after the Berlin Wall fell.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of the East German singers were flooding into West Germany and Austria. And they were great singers, but they couldn't perform in the West. Yeah. So a lot of North American singers went over and got house contracts in Germany and Austria. Well, things got tighter. That this would have been, I guess the wall fell in 93. Is that correct?
It's about then, yeah.
Somewhere
exactly in there.
Well, this would have been about 1994. So it was right after that. And she said, you have 3 kids. You're being offered a very good conducting job. And you're getting paid in American dollars. You know, you're getting your health care paid for. And most people who graduate with a music degree never do music again in their lives. So she said, just take it. And so the priest was very interested. He actually came up to Montreal to interview me, and we had a really good interview. So he offered it to me, and then I went down there to conduct a polyphonic choir, which is an a cappella mixed voice choir, men and women, and then a men's schola, which did the Gregorian chant. And so I was doing that. While I was there, I also, turns out there was a seminary that for the order that the priest was in that needed a logic teacher. And I had my degree previously from Thomas Aquinas College. which has a very rigorous philosophy program. And so I said, well, teach at the seminary, that's like college level courses. The people get credit for those. If they leave the seminary, those courses count to their college credits. And I said, I only have a bachelor's. And the person who was trying to get me to do the logic course said, I know the program that you've gone through. It's more rigorous than what people get at a master's level. So I taught 2 years at the seminary. I taught the logic, ethics, and introduction to philosophy. So, and then went on to teach at a private boys' school in the area too, St. Gregory's Academy. And we were all set to stay there. We bought a house. It was beautiful country, beautiful people. And then 5 years into it, I woke up one morning and I just had this thought, I have to move back. And I don't know what it was. It's just I had to move back. And some people say, the trees can do that, the mountains can do that. I don't know what it was, but it was just this tug. And so within a year from that day, we were on our way back to BC, and specifically to White Rock. So that was back in 2000.
2000 now.
June of 2000.
And then how did you get involved with the Canucks? And you've done some TV shows and cameo appearances and a number of things. How did all of these things evolve?
Well, that was your original question. I went on about everything else. The Scranton Wilkes-Barre was awarded an AHL franchise, and it was to be the farm team of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And so I thought, oh, that's going to be great. I'd love to sing the anthem for them. I love singing the anthem, but I also love hockey. So it would mean that I could go see some pretty high level hockey quite regularly. So I was hired to sing for an event run by the Friendly Sons of Ireland. It sounds like a bit of an IRA group, but it wasn't. And their guest of honor was Jeff Barrett, who was the president of the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, the new team. So after I sang my few Irish songs and the dinner's done, I went up to him and I said, Mr. Barrett, I'm from Canada. I'm a huge hockey fan. I would love the opportunity to sing for your team. And he said, well, we're going to have some auditions, so I'll let you know when those are, or rather we'll let people know when they are. And it kind of stopped at that. And this was, of course, in March when St. Patrick's Day is. So I'm waiting. It gets to September and I haven't seen anything. So I finally decide to give them a call. The home games were delayed because the arena wasn't finished yet. So the home games weren't starting until the beginning of November. So I called in September and I said, hi, my name's Mark Donnelly. I sang at an event with Jeff Barrett. He said there were going to be auditions for the anthem, and the receptionist says, okay, Mr. Donnelly, can I take your number down? And I hear this call in the background. Is that Mark Donnelly? And she says, yes, give me the phone. So he grabs the phone. He says, yeah, hi, Jeff Barrett says you're our anthem singer. And we got a couple of sets of season tickets down here for you. And I said, oh, I thought there were auditions. He said, no, you're our guy. And then he says, you probably know a lot of the singers around here. And I said, yeah, I know them pretty well. He says, well, okay, if you can't make it, can you get your own sub? So that's how I got started. So I went down there. I bought a Penguins sweatshirt, and then went home and I had these two set of season tickets. And it was later in the year, it was clear we were moving, that we were actually going to move back to Vancouver. So the Stan Smeal was, the Canuck great, was the coach of the Syracuse Crunch. And when he came in, I was walking down the corridor to get ready to sing the anthem, and I passed by the trainer's room, and I see Stan Smeal in there, and it's like, oh, it's Stan Smeal. So I thought, should I go in and say something? I thought I got to. So I walk in there and I say, Mr. Smeal, I've admired you for so long, back when you played for the New Westminster Bruins and then the Canucks. I'm from Vancouver. And he was very nice. And so I went out and sang the anthem. And then the next time they were in, we knew for sure we were moving back to Vancouver or the Vancouver area. So I said, Mr. Smeal, and he said, Stan, okay, we're moving back to Vancouver. I'd really love the opportunity to sing for the Canucks. And so he told me who I should talk to on the Canucks, and I can't remember the person's name. Otherwise, it'd add to the story a bit. But so we get back. I finally call the guy, and he says, well, send a tape. That was back when we sent things on cassette tape. So I sent him a cassette tape, and this was again in September, and I waited, got to January, hadn't heard anything. And so I called him up and I said, hi, this is Mark Donnelly. I sent you tape in September. Stan Smeal said I should talk to you. And so I could sort of feel this kind of I could hear this rustling on his desk. So I think he probably moved a bunch of papers around and then like, oh, here's the tape. So he says, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. So I hung up. He called me back in about 5 minutes and he said, can you sing this Wednesday? And I said, sure. So I sang, and then early the following week, he said, oh, the singer for the Saturday game is sick and we need a replacement. Can you sing? This was on Monday, and I thought, that's kind of weird. What singer would give up singing for you feel sick on Monday, you do everything so you're better by Saturday, right? So that was the first time I sang on a hockey night in Canada. So that would have been the January 2002. And so I sang a few more games that year. I think I wound up singing about 5 games that year. And then it just sort of kind of stuck. And I love singing the anthem. My dad was always a proud Canadian. And so when I sing the anthem, it's never rote. It always means something. Because, as Ronald Reagan said, freedom's only one generation. Our loss of freedom is only one generation away. And so when I sing the anthem, I try as far as possible not to take what I'm saying for granted. And I don't know, maybe that's why people like it. But I find it a huge honor to be able to do that. To sing on Remembrance Day, to sing at the Cenotaph just down by City Hall, for all those who've given their lives to preserve our freedom. I think of that. I'm singing for them as much as I'm singing for the players when I sing at a hockey game. So anyway, I love doing it. I just love doing it because of what it represents.
And you do it so well, and people can feel it, because I think you described a little bit about getting involved in music and in singing, but there's such a dynamic, iterative relationship between you and the music, and that comes through in your personality, and your beliefs and your values seem to shine through, which I think makes it so much more impactful for all of us who have little talent, but lots of joy and respect for the singing that you do, and the other contributions you make to our community. So I know we're running a little bit out of time here, but can you talk a little bit about your family and your 9 children and their involvement and the things they're
Yeah.
done.
Well,
Obviously,
we have 9 children, and I'm kind of proud to say the last let me count them. That would be uh, the last 4 were born in White Rock, but not at the hospital. The last 4 were home births,
yeah, nice.
so they were born right here at on Buena Vista, and one of them, when Joseph was born, actually the health authorities were very happy about that, because the morning that my wife went into labor with Joseph, we got a call from the local health nurse who said 3 of us had tested positive for whooping cough. And so I said, well, my wife just went into labor, and she was saying, oh, that's going to be difficult coming down to the hospital. And I said, well, it's going to be a home birth. She goes, that's great. So the midwives came in, and of course we weren't able to see Catherine, and Joseph had to quarantine within our house.
Yeah.
So they were in the room they were actually in my studio upstairs. So they were in there. The rest of us had to quarantine till we were done, or over the whooping cough. But yeah, that was kind of a interesting thing. So that's one fringe benefit of a home birth, is if you have something, you don't infect the people at the hospital.
And you're a grandparent now too.
Second time over, yes. Colleen, whom you've met, I believe. And Colleen and I she's the one that went on and got a music degree also from UBC. She's a better singer than I am. She did the opera performance program at UBC with Nancy Hermiston, and she went and sang over in Czechoslovakia, but then after a degree, got married a very nice young fellow, and who's a professional pilot, and they live up in Edmonton. So I haven't been up to visit them there. Most of the rest of the family has been able to visit them there. I haven't gone there yet, but it almost a year and 3/4 ago, we had Leo, and now he has a younger brother, Aaron Maximus.
Aaron Maximus.
Yes, that's a pretty strong name.
Sure is, yeah.
So he's our second child. In fact, well, this whole COVID business has been going on. We had a wedding that we missed in May, down in California. Our eldest son, Sean, got married. And so we weren't able to go down for that. And then my mother passed away, who was a resident of White Rock, and then was living in Crescent Beach the last 25 years, Ocean Park. So that was difficult. She just she was 94. She lived a nice full life. She was Ukrainian, wound up living most of the Second World War in Germany, but due to getting on the wrong train. And so it was kind of as you know, there were many Jews were persecuted and put to death under the Nazis, but a lot of people don't know that there's about the same amount Ukrainians and other Slavs, just for being Slavs. And so she survived that. She came to Canada. She loved Canada, and she had a very long, full life here. One of her greatest sorrows, two of her greatest sorrows, was my father passing away in '82, And then my sister passing away in 2011. The one thing she said, you never want to outlive your children. But on the upside, she was able to see her her first great grandchild, and fortunately, we have pictures of her with Leo, so that's very you know, comforting. You don't want to forget the people who've gone before you, especially parents. So anyway, and then we had Aaron was born in September, and that was great because Catherine was able to go up there and be there for the birth, and that was a home birth.
Oh, wonderful.
So that was great. And then we came back, and then Francis got married in Virginia, and we thought, well, there's no way we're going to miss this one. So we did, we did what we could to make sure that we could get to Virginia, and we flew into Charlotte and drove up 3 hours from Charlotte up to this kind of a remote spot in Virginia. And that was great. Of course, it was limited attendance at the wedding, but fortunately, all the kids were able to be there except for Colleen, because she had just given birth, of course. So that was great. And in fact, the younger kid, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 of our kids were meeting Sean's wife for the first time, because we all thought we were going to meet her in May. Fortunately, Catherine and I were able to go down to California February of this year, just before things got tight at the border. This February was my, not only was it a real birthday, but it was my 60th birthday. So, so we went down there, and Sean and his wife Janie were in a production of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and they had the 2 leads.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It was that kind of a foreshadowing.
Well, indeed. Well, I'm worried that we're going to get cut off here in terms of the time we get. So have you got any final words you'd like to leave for our audience? Or
I guess I would just say, for everybody, love your country, love Western culture, love beauty, and love the truth, and always seek after it. And no one, it's important that in these times when even science can become partisan, I think it's important that we use our intellects and our humility to be able to recognize what is correct and recognize when we're wrong and be able to change.
Those are wonderful words, and certainly mark your life, and you've obviously been very blessed as you've gone through life, and having faith and confidence and support from so many people. And I'm honored to know you, and so delighted that you've made such a wonderful contribution, not just to our community, but to our province. And the pride you hold for our country is heartwarming and a very positive thing as well. So thank you so very much to you and to your family for all you do for our community and for our country more broadly. Thank you for joining us today on Community Connections. Please tune in to our next show as more amazing people share their wonderful stories. If you haven't already, please click on the red subscribe button below, right down there, and view our updates. Feel free to leave any thoughts or comments that you may have. We're always trying to do a better job of connecting this wonderful community. Thanks again for joining, and until next time, keep connecting. Thank you.